The stars of the Orion Arm glittered like diamonds against the endless darkness of space. To an outside observer, the galaxy looked peaceful, beautiful, alive. But beneath that beauty, an ancient nightmare was spreading. For decades, frightened whispers had traveled from one star system to the next. Entire civilizations spoke of a single name with fear: the Devourers. No one knew where they had come from. No one knew who had created them. Some believed they were the remnants of a forgotten empire. Others claimed they were living weapons unleashed by a civilization that had destroyed itself millions of years ago. No theory had ever been proven, because no one had survived long enough to learn the truth. Only one fact was certain. When the Devourers arrived, worlds died. They never sent warnings. They never demanded surrender. They never negotiated. Mercy was a concept they simply did not understand. Without a single transmission, their fleets emerged from the darkness. Black warships, darker than the void itself, swallowed entire skies. There were so many that stars disappeared behind them, like an endless storm crossing the galaxy. Orbital defenses vanished within minutes. Planetary shields collapsed. Cities that had stood for thousands of years became clouds of ash. Oceans boiled, continents burned. The Devourers stripped every world of life with cold, mechanical precision. When they finally departed, nothing remained except empty planets, drifting silently through space. Dead worlds, forgotten worlds. The coalition of free species had fought them for nearly 30 years. It was the greatest alliance the galaxy had ever assembled. Hundreds of civilizations, thousands of fleets, millions of soldiers. Ancient enemies had become allies simply to survive. Among them were the graceful Yalari, masters of crystal starships that shimmered like living jewels beneath the light of distant suns. Their vessels could bend energy into brilliant shields capable of surviving the heart of a star. The towering Drakor, reptilian giants whose warships carried enough firepower to shatter moons. The brilliant Neskari, whose artificial intelligences calculated battles before the first shot was ever fired. The relentless Koruan, warriors who considered retreat the greatest dishonor imaginable. Each civilization brought the greatest weapons they had ever created. Each believed they possessed the answer. Each believed they could stop the nightmare. Every one of them was wrong. Fleet after fleet disappeared. Entire sectors fell silent. One by one, the brightest stars of the coalition were extinguished. The Devourers never celebrated victory, never mocked their enemies, never even acknowledged their existence. To them, every civilization was nothing more than another resource waiting to be consumed. Hope slowly disappeared from the galaxy. Maps changed every month. Safe regions became battlefields overnight. Refugee fleets wandered endlessly between the stars, carrying the last survivors of worlds that no longer existed. The coalition continued fighting. Not because they believed they could win, but because surrender meant extinction. Then, something unexpected happened. At the edge of coalition territory, long-range sensors detected a new civilization. A species that had never appeared in any galactic records. A race whose ships looked strangely primitive compared to the advanced vessels of the coalition. Small, angular, made from dull gray metal instead of elegant crystal or living alloys. The first reports dismissed them immediately. Newly spacefaring, technologically insignificant, no military value. The coalition command prepared to issue a simple evacuation order. Leave. Hide. Run while there was still time, because once the Devourers discovered them, they would vanish like every civilization before them. No one realized that those ordinary gray ships belonged to a species unlike anything the galaxy had ever encountered. A species born on a world where survival had always been earned through struggle. A species that had spent its entire history fighting predators, fighting nature, fighting each other, until they had learned one simple truth. If a monster refused to stop coming, then you didn't run from it. You became the bigger monster. And somewhere beyond the edge of known space, humanity had just received its first distress call. The towering Hearn, whose strength was legendary, the thoughtful Very, masters of energy science, and many more. Together, they had believed they were unshakable. Their fleet stretched across light years, their weapons burned hotter than suns, and their technology was the most advanced in the known galaxy. But against the Devourers, all of it failed. Battle after battle, the coalition fleets were broken. Every weapon they built, the enemy learned to resist. Every defense they raised, the enemy found a way through. Planets that had stood for thousands of years fell in days. Entire species were hunted to the edge of extinction. Hope began to fade. On the council world of Sereth, the coalition gathered for what many believed was their final meeting. The Great Hall of Concord was filled with representatives of a dozen species. They spoke in deep voices, high whistles, or silent flashes of light from bioluminescent patterns. Yet all their languages carried the same weight. Fear. "The swarm has crossed the rim," announced High Chancellor Relith of the Yari. His voice trembled, though he tried to keep it steady. "They will reach the inner worlds in less than 2 cycles. We cannot stop them." Murmurs filled the chamber. Some shouted for new weapons. Others begged for evacuation. But everyone knew the truth. The coalition had no more tricks to play. Then Elder Vera of the Vayari rose. Her body glowed with soft blue light, her kind's natural energy. She was older than most in the chamber, and her eyes had seen too many defeats. Yet she carried something the others had lost, memory of the ancient records. "There is one thing left," she said softly. But her words carried across the chamber. "One last call, older than any of our species. It was placed here before we even walked among the stars. A beacon hidden beneath this very hall. It was meant for times of true desperation. It can send a signal farther than any of our ships can travel. It can cross the void between arms of the galaxy, perhaps even beyond." The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew of the ancient beacon, though most thought it was only legend. "And if we use it?" asked Chancellor Relith. "Then perhaps," Vera replied, "someone will hear us." Hope flickered. It was a weak flame, but it was more than they had left. The council voted, and for the first time in centuries, the beacon beneath Sarah was awakened. The ground shook as ancient machines came alive. Towers of light rose into the sky, reaching beyond the clouds. A deep hum filled the air, older than any city, older than any war. The signal burned through space faster than light, faster than thought. It carried a single message repeated again and again in every known language. "We are the coalition of free species. We are under attack by the Devourers. We beg any who hear this, help us, or all we know will be lost." The message crossed the galaxy. It leapt across empty space where no star shone. It passed dying worlds and forgotten ruins. It echoed into silence. Weeks passed. The coalition waited. In the meantime, the Devourers pressed on. Another system fell. Another fleet was broken. Refugees crowded into the inner worlds. The fear grew stronger. Many began to believe the beacon had been wasted effort. Who could possibly hear them from so far away? Who would even answer if they did? But then something happened. It was Admiral Serac of the Hearn who first noticed. His great eyes scanned the long-range sensors. One quiet night, a strange signal appeared at the edge of detection. At first, he thought it was static. Then he listened closely. The signal was unlike any coalition transmission. It was simple, almost primitive, a repeating code of pulses and pauses. Sarek sent it to the council, and the best linguists of the coalition studied it. It took them days, but at last they broke its meaning. The signal came from a small blue planet far on the edge of a quiet spiral arm. Its people called it Earth, and the message they sent back was not long, nor filled with titles or ceremony. It was only 3 words spoken in a voice both calm and fierce. "We're coming." The council chamber erupted with confusion. Some laughed in disbelief. Others trembled. Could it be true? Could a species so far away have heard them? And if so, what kind of people would answer such a desperate cry without question? Admiral Serac leaned forward. His deep voice carried a strange mix of relief and dread. "They have heard us," he said, "and they are coming. The question is, what have we invited into our war?" Far across the stars on a world called Earth, engines roared to life. The signal from Earth traveled faster than light, but the humans themselves did not. For many weeks, the coalition waited, watching the stars with growing unease. Some believed no one was truly coming. Others believed the ones who had answered were too far away to arrive in time. But then, one by one, strange new ships appeared at the edge of Coalition space. They were unlike anything the Council had seen before, where Yulari vessels shone like crystal towers, and Vari craft glowed with smooth energy fields. The human ships were dark, heavy, and scarred. Some looked like giant spears with engines strapped on. Others looked like flying fortresses covered in armor plating. They did not flow with elegance. They did not shine with beauty. They looked built for one thing only. War Coalition sensors scanned them in confusion. Human ships carried more weapons than seemed possible. Cannons lined every surface. Missiles were hidden in clusters. Thick layers of metal plating wrapped their hulls. And behind it, heat signatures showed machinery working at dangerous levels. To the Coalition, it was madness. These ships looked less like works of engineering and more like beasts of iron and fire. The first meeting took place above Sera, the Council world. The human flagship moved into orbit. Compared to the vast fleets of the Coalition, it was small. Yet, there was something unsettling about it. Its presence felt like the shadow of a predator in a forest filled with prey. From the Coalition's side, 3 delegates prepared to greet the newcomers. Chancellor Relith of the Yari, Admiral Sack of the Hearn, and Elder Vera of the Vey. They waited in the grand chamber, their eyes fixed on the glowing gate where the human representatives would arrive. When the gate opened, the aliens saw them for the first time. The humans were tall compared to the Yellary and the Vey, although shorter than the towering Hearn. They wore dark uniforms, not ceremonial robes. Their faces were firm, their eyes sharp and restless, always moving, always watching. Some carried scars, others carried the heavy look of people who had seen too many battles. To the Coalition, they seemed almost frightening, where Yari eyes shone with calm light, and her eyes reflected strength. Human eyes carried something else, a fire that could not be explained. Chancellor Relith stepped forward, his crystalline body shimmering. "We thank you," he said carefully, "for answering our call. But we must ask, who are you?" The human leader, a woman with close-cut hair and a scar across her cheek, answered without hesitation. Her voice was steady, but it carried weight. "We are the people of Earth," she said. "You asked for help. We came." The words were simple, but they rang through the chamber, with a power that silenced everyone. Admiral Sorak studied her closely. "Do you understand what you are walking into? The Devourers have ended entire civilizations. They cannot be reasoned with. They cannot be stopped. Even our greatest fleets have failed. The humans' expression did not change. Then we will fight them anyway." The chamber stirred with uneasy whispers. "Why?" Elder Vera asked softly. "You are far from us. Our worlds are not yours. Our war is not your war. Why would you come?" The human leader's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, silence hung heavy in the chamber. Then she answered, "Because we know what it means to face monsters. We know what it means to fight for survival. On our world, we were shaped by struggle. We are still here because we refuse to bow down to anything that tried to end us. If you are fighting for survival, then so are we." The council fell silent. Some felt hope spark in their hearts. Others felt only fear, for these humans who spoke so boldly seemed less like saviors and more like predators who had chosen to hunt on a new field. Soon after, the Coalition invited the humans to join a war council. They wanted to see if these strange beings truly had a plan. The humans sat at the round table, among the greatest commanders of the galaxy. On glowing maps, the Devourer's advance was displayed. Dark swarms, spreading across star systems like a shadow. Coalition generals explained their defeats. They spoke of fleet shattered, weapons useless, and defenses torn apart. The atmosphere was heavy with despair. At last, one of the humans leaned forward. His name was Captain Ree, and his face carried the calm of someone who had survived countless battles. He studied the glowing map and then spoke. "You are fighting them the wrong way," he said simply. The chamber stiffened. Chancellor Relith's crystal surface shimmered uneasily. "What do you mean?" "You fight like they do," Ree explained. "Ship against ship, fleet against fleet, in open battles where numbers and strength decide everything. But you can't outnumber them. You can't outlast them. That's why you keep losing." Admiral Sock growled. "And what would you suggest, human?" Reese's eyes narrowed. "Don't fight them on their terms. Fight them on ours. Ambush them. Trick them. Break their swarms apart and destroy them piece by piece. You don't stand in front of a monster. You go for its throat, when it least expects it. The chamber filled with uneasy silence. To many of the coalition, such tactics sounded dishonorable, even reckless. But to others, the humans' words rang with a strange truth. Elder Vera spoke at last. "You speak as if you have done this before." Race's eyes darkened. "On Earth, we've done nothing else. Our history is war, disaster, and survival. We are here because we learned to fight harder than anything else alive." The coalition leaders were unsettled. These humans were not like any ally they had imagined. They did not speak of peace or balance. They did not offer great technology or wisdom. They offered only war, fought in a way that seemed savage. Yet in the darkest corners of their hearts, many of the council members felt something they had not felt in years: hope. For if anyone could stand against the Devourers, perhaps it was these strange, dangerous beings from Earth. But as the humans left the chamber, one question remained in every mind. Chancellor Relith voiced it quietly to Elder Vera as he watched them go. Did we call for allies, or did we summon monsters? Vera's glow dimmed with unease. She could not answer. Far away on the edges of space, the first human fleets prepared for their trial by fire. The humans had spoken with confidence, but words were not enough. The coalition was not a people of faith. They trusted only in results. To them, the Devourers were not stories, but a nightmare they had fought for decades. If the humans truly meant to help, they would have to prove themselves in battle. The chance came sooner than expected. At the edge of coalition space, a star system named Rail had already fallen. Once it had been home to thriving colonies of the Hern, but now its planets were ash and ruin. Sensors showed the Devourers still swarming through the system, stripping what little life remained. The coalition had abandoned hope of reclaiming it. To send a fleet there was considered suicide. But when the humans heard of it, they did not hesitate. "Send us to Raelith," said Captain Ree. His calm voice carried across the War Council. "We will show you how we fight." Chancellor Relith's crystal surface dimmed in disbelief. "You cannot be serious. That system is lost. Even if you went, what could you possibly achieve?" Reese leaned forward, his eyes steady. "We won't retake it, but we will make them bleed. And we will show you that the Devourers can be hurt." After long debate, the council agreed. They gave the humans permission to strike Wraith. Many believed it was a mistake. Some whispered, it was not permission, but a death sentence. The human fleet entered Wraith quietly, slipping from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. The Devourer swarm filled their sensors like a living storm. Thousands of enemy ships, dark and jagged, moved through the wreckage of ruined planets. On the bridge of the human flagship Iron Will, Captain Ree stood calm. Around him, his crew moved with sharp focus. These were not untested recruits. They were soldiers, veterans of wars fought on their own world. They knew fear, but they did not bow to it. "Enemy swarm is dense near the inner planets," reported a young officer. "Their attention is on the last resource harvesters. They don't see us yet." Ree gave a thin smile. "Good. Let's keep it that way." Unlike the coalition, who always fought the Devourers in open battle, the humans had a different plan. They split their fleet into small groups, each moving on a separate path. Some hugged the cover of asteroid belts, others hid in the shadows of broken moons. Their ships moved like hunters stalking prey. At last, the trap was set. "On my mark," Reese ordered. His fleet struck as one. Human missiles flew from hidden positions, ripping into the swarm. Cannons thundered, tearing holes in enemy lines. From behind asteroids, human ships emerged suddenly, unleashing fire before vanishing again. The Devourers reacted with confusion. They were used to opponents who met them head-on. The humans refused to play that game. They struck from every side, retreating before the swarm could focus on them. The Iron Will dove straight into the swarm, weapons blazing. Devourer ships surrounded it, closing in like wolves. But before they could strike, human marines launched boarding pods. They crashed into enemy hulls, cutting their way inside. For the first time in the war, the Devourers met enemies who dared to fight them face-to-face on their own ships. Reports of chaos spread through the coalition's observation posts. The humans were not only fighting the swarm, they were hurting it. Enemy ships burned. Enemy formations broke. For the first time in decades, the Devourers retreated from a battlefield. On Sara, the council chamber erupted in disbelief. Coalition commanders watched the battle unfold through live reports. "They are reckless," one general muttered, his voice full of shock. "They throw themselves into death again and again." "Yes," Elder Vera whispered, her glow trembling. "But they survive." Admiral Sarok leaned forward, his massive fists clenched. For years, he had fought the Devourers and lost. Now, for the first time, he saw them flee. His deep voice rumbled through the chamber. "These humans, they fight like monsters." Back in Wraith, the battle dragged on. The humans had bloodied the swarm, but the Devourers adapted quickly. New ships appeared stronger and faster. Their armor shifted to resist human weapons. The humans knew this would happen. "The Devourers always learned," Captain warned the officer at sensors. "They're adjusting. They'll overwhelm us if we stay too long." Ree nodded. "Then we don't stay. Signal the fleet. Execute withdrawal." The humans pulled back, but even in retreat, they refused to give the enemy peace. They left mines hidden in the asteroid belts. They detonated fuel depots to ignite massive explosions. Every step of their retreat was a trap, bleeding the swarm further. When at last the human fleet jumped back to Coalition space, the system of Ryle was left smoking. The Devourers still held it, but they had lost hundreds of ships in the process. More than that, they had tasted something they had not known before: pain. When the humans returned, the Coalition greeted them with a silence heavy with awe. No one had expected them to survive. No one had expected them to win. Yet here they stood, battered but unbroken. Chancellor Rith approached Captain Ree. His crystalline body flickered with unease. You fought them, and you lived. You even drove them back. How?" Reese's eyes were calm, but his voice carried quiet fire. "Because we do not fear them on Earth. We were born among predators. We fought tooth and claw for every inch of survival. We learned to adapt faster than our enemies. That is what we bring to this war." The chamber was filled with whispers. Some were words of admiration, others were words of fear. For while the humans had proven themselves, they had also shown a side that unsettled the Coalition deeply. The Yari saw them as reckless. The Vayari saw them as dangerous. Even the mighty Hearn looked at them with new caution. The humans had fought like beasts unleashed, tearing into the Devourers with no regard for safety, no hesitation in sacrifice. "They are saviors," one council member said. "They are monsters," another replied. Perhaps, Elder Vera thought silently. They were both far from the council chambers. The humans repaired their ships and prepared for the next battle. To them, Wraith was only the beginning. They had seen the Devourers, measured their strength, and learned their weaknesses. The war was far from over, but now humanity was part of it. On the bridge of the Iron Will, Captain Ree looked out at the stars. His crew moved quietly, exhausted but determined. He spoke softly, but his words carried the weight of truth. "They think we are monsters," he said. "Let them think it. If monsters are what it takes to end this swarm, then monsters we will be." The stars ahead seemed endless, filled with war and fire. But for the first time in living memory, the galaxy had found warriors who did not bow to the Devourers. For the first time, there was hope. The humans had returned from Wraith, battered but victorious. Their actions were not just victories, they were lessons. The Devourers had been hurt, and the Coalition had seen a new way to fight. Yet, celebration was scarce. The leaders of the Coalition could not deny the human skill, but unease filled the halls. The humans were unpredictable, reckless, and wild in ways that no one fully understood. They fought like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. Some council members whispered to one another in fear. Could these humans turn on the Coalition? Could their ferocity, which now saved lives, become a threat someday? Chancellor Rith called a meeting. The council chambers were tense, filled with the leaders of the Coalition and the humans who had just survived Raylith. "We owe you respect," Rith said. "You have done what we believed impossible. But your methods, they are dangerous." Captain Ree stood calmly. His expression did not change. "We fight to win. We do not seek destruction beyond what is necessary. If you ask us to be gentle, you will lose. If you ask us to fight, we will survive, and so will you." Elder Vera, her glow dim but steady, added, "We need your strength, human. But can we trust it? Can we trust you to not turn your ferocity against us?" Reese's eyes softened slightly. "We are not your enemies. We have no desire to conquer. We are here because we understand survival. You fight for your people. We fight for ours. and now we fight for yours too. Still, many species were wary. The Hern argued heatedly in the council, their massive bodies shaking the floor as they spoke. These humans are too dangerous. Their methods could destroy us all. They are not allies. They are monsters. Rees leaned forward. If monsters are what it takes to stop the Devourers, then monsters we will be. You can call us that if it makes you sleep at night. But know this, we fight with honor for life, not for power. The council debated long into the next cycle. Some species insisted on strict control of human forces. Others argued that humans must be allowed freedom, for it was their instinct, their unpredictability, that made them effective. In the end, a compromise was reached. Humans would lead strike teams with the coalition observing, but their methods would not be restricted. The uneasy alliance formed. Humans and aliens trained together, shared information, and coordinated attacks. The humans studied coalition technology, while teaching the coalition ways to fight that went beyond brute force. The Devourers, who had thought the galaxy's defenders predictable, would soon face a war unlike any they had imagined. As the humans prepared for the next mission, Ree addressed his team. The Devourers are adapting. We need to adapt faster. This war is not over. Our survival depends on what we do next. Every choice matters. Every strike counts. Remember, we are monsters, yes, but we are monsters who save lives. The crew nodded silently, ready for the trials ahead. Meanwhile, the Devourers observed from the shadows of space. Their swarm had been hurt by the humans at Rail, and for the first time, they sensed danger that was not merely another enemy fleet. Something about these humans was different, adaptive, relentless, dangerous. Perhaps they thought they had met their match. The galaxy held its breath. Allies and enemies alike knew that the next battles would determine more than survival. They would define who controlled the stars. And through it all, humanity stood at the center. Wild, fierce, and unwilling to back down. The final battle came sooner than anyone had hoped. The Devourers had gathered their forces for a massive assault, one designed to crush the Coalition's fleets entirely. Star systems that had been safe for centuries were now in danger of being wiped out. The humans were ready. They had spent cycles preparing, training, and adapting. Their fleet had grown, incorporating modifications and tactics inspired by the Coalition, but enhanced with human ingenuity. Every ship, every soldier, every plan had one purpose: stop the Devourers and save the galaxy. The Coalition assembled their largest combined fleet. Tens of thousands of ships from countless species moved toward the Devourer swarm. They were joined by the humans, whose numbers were smaller, but whose impact would be far greater. The battlefield stretched across multiple star systems, illuminated by the glow of nebulae and burning planets. The Devourers moved like a living storm, dark and relentless. Their ships were countless, their formations terrifying, their weapons deadly. Captain Ree stood on the bridge of the Iron Will, staring at the enemy swarm. His crew worked silently, each member aware of the dangers ahead. "Everything depends on precision," Ree said. "We cannot just fight, we must lead them where we want. Every move must count. We are not just soldiers, we are hunters, and this is the ultimate hunt." The humans moved first, slipping through gaps in the enemy formation. Their ships darted like shadows, striking from angles the Devourers could not anticipate. Explosions erupted as hidden mines, ambushes, and feints tore into the swarm. The Devourers adapted quickly, but the humans had expected this. Every strike was calculated, every withdrawal planned. Human boarding pods struck again and again, cutting through enemy ships from the inside. Coalition fleets were amazed. The humans were not just fighting. They were teaching the Devourers how to fear. Then came the trap. In the heart of a dense nebula, the humans had laid hidden weapons, gravitational distortions, explosive devices, and energy traps. The Devourers, in their pursuit of human ships, fell into the trap. Stars and planets themselves became weapons. As the nebula erupted and controlled destruction, entire fleets of Devourers were shattered. The battle raged for cycles. Many human ships were lost, but the Devourers were destroyed in far greater numbers. Every loss was calculated, every strike purposeful. By the end, the swarm that had terrified the galaxy was broken. The Devourers retreated into the depths of space, leaving behind systems that would never forget the humans who had stopped them. When the battle ended, silence fell across the Coalition fleet. They looked at the humans not with fear, but with awe. These monsters, as they had called them, had saved them all. Their ferocity, their unpredictability, their courage, these were not threats. They were salvation. Chancellor Relief stepped aboard the Iron Will. He looked at Captain Ree, his crystal body reflecting the light of burning stars. "You were monsters in battle," he said. "But you were the monsters who saved us. The galaxy owes you more than words can say." Ree shook his head. "We are not heroes," he said softly. "We are survivors. We fight because we must. If that makes us monsters, then so be it. But we will always fight to save life, not to take it." The coalition leaders nodded, realizing the truth. Humanity was not perfect, but it was strong. It was wild, unpredictable, and dangerous. But those same qualities had turned the tide of war. In the aftermath, the humans repaired their ships, tended to their wounded, and prepared for the next challenge. The Devourers had retreated, but they were not gone. Humanity would remain vigilant, ready to strike wherever darkness threatened the stars. Captain Ree looked out at the stars once more. "We came because we were called," he said. "We fought because it was necessary. And now we stay. Next time the galaxy faces monsters, they won't stand alone. We will be here always." And so the humans became legends across the galaxy. To the coalition, they were allies. To the Devourers, they were a nightmare. To themselves, they were simply survivors, ready to fight again when the call came. The galaxy would never forget the monsters of Earth, the monsters who saved the stars.